The strength of a nation's currency is based on the strength of that nation's economy. And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world.
The US dollar isn't going away tomorrow, but the bedrock it's built on is starting to show deep cracks. While you weren't looking, Ripple's network and its partners moved billions of dollars last quarter, proving its scale. Just recently, a US court handed down a landmark ruling that gave XRP the green light. At the same time, Japan's top financial regulators gave the nod for yen-backed stablecoins to be issued on the XRP ledger. To truly understand the magnitude of this change, let's move away from abstract concepts and look at a real-world scenario. Picture this. A growing electronics exporter based in South Korea needs to send a large shipment of components to a new buyer in Brazil. The payment for these goods is critical and time-sensitive. The old way of doing this involves a traditional bank wire transfer. This process kicks off a slow, cumbersome journey for the money. It will take, on average, 3 to 5 business days to complete. During this time, the payment is passed between multiple intermediary banks, each one taking a slice of the pie. This chain of correspondent banks results in total fees that can be as high as 4% of the transaction value. On a large shipment, that's a significant cost. Now, let's look at the new way. Using a technology like Ripple's on-demand liquidity, which is powered by the XRP digital asset. That exact same payment settles in under 5 seconds. The cost? A tiny fraction of a penny. This isn't a futuristic projection or a science fiction concept. It is a live operational tool being used by payment companies across the globe. When you start to think of money not as paper, but as pure data, you begin to see the colossal efficiency gap between the plumbing of Wall Street and the potential of cryptocurrency.
I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
The US dollar's dominance stands on 2 legs: trust and utility. Both are getting wobbly. In terms of trust, our national debt has blown past $36 trillion. In just 4 years, the Federal Reserve fired up the printing presses and created 6 trillion new dollars. That means a huge chunk of all dollars in existence didn't even exist before 2020. That level of debt and printing naturally makes people question its long-term value. On the utility side, the SWIFT system is a relic. It creates settlement delays of days and racks up high fees because of the chain of correspondent banks it needs. Meanwhile, other countries are building their own highways. The weaponization of the dollar through sanctions has also pushed nations to find channels outside of direct US control. This is exactly why you see economic powerhouses like Japan and South Korea, and even blocs like BRICS, exploring new payment routes that run on ledgers like XRP.
One of our president's most important appointments is chairman of the Federal Reserve. The Fed is the symbol of the integrity of our financial system, and the decisions of the Fed affects the lives and livelihoods of all Americans.
I think we're mysterious to people. I think they're not sure what we do.
The Fed is a sometimes very independent organization.
Every Federal Reserve chairman says one thing and does another.
It's a bunch of government workers trying to fix prices.
The Fed kept interest rates too low for too long.
All of that led to, as you know, a big boom and a big bust.
Some of us were writing back then, guys, this is absurd. This can't happen. It's going to end in tears.
At the very center of the dollar's trust problem sits its guardian, the US Federal Reserve. The Fed's primary mandate is to ensure stable prices and maximum employment by managing the nation's money supply. But its recent policies have undermined that trust. To counter the economic effects of the pandemic, the Federal Reserve engaged in massive quantitative easing, essentially printing trillions of new dollars. If you find this analysis valuable, please like the video to help it reach a wider audience, and make sure to subscribe for more in-depth stories. In just 2 years, from early 2020 to early 2022, the total supply of US dollars increased by an astounding 40%. While this was done to keep the economy afloat, it's an action with severe consequences. as it devalues every other dollar in existence and risks triggering inflation.
Now, what is this action, which is very technical, what does it mean for you? Let me lay to rest the bugaboo of what is called devaluation. If you want to buy a foreign car or take a trip abroad, market conditions may cause your dollar to buy slightly less. But if you are among the overwhelming majority of Americans who buy American-made products in America, your dollar will be worth just as much tomorrow as it is today. The effect of this action, in other words, will be to stabilize the dollar.
Now, facing a world demanding faster payments, the Fed has tried to respond with its own upgrade, a system called FedNow. This system aims to modernize domestic payments, but it has a critical design flaw in the context of global finance. It is not built on a blockchain, and it does not work across borders. Simultaneously, the Fed is heavily researching a digital dollar, or CBDC, but this is a monumental and slow-moving project facing immense political and technical hurdles. One might suggest using established cryptocurrencies as an alternative. However, attempting to purchase a pizza with Bitcoin could involve a network fee that exceeds the cost of the item itself. On a high-traffic day, the Ethereum network presents similar challenges. Confirmation can take several minutes, during which price volatility can alter the transaction's value. Second-layer solutions like the Lightning Network introduce their own complexities, such as routing difficulties and liquidity requirements. While cryptocurrency promised financial autonomy, the majority of users revert to traditional card networks for their reliability. The ideal solution would be a ledger that finalizes transactions in seconds for a fraction of a cent, with predictable costs and no network congestion.
We fail to regulate the most important part of our financial system.
And I don't think any of us who've ever worked at the Fed take any comfort from the fact that somebody screwed up. But it's important we recognize there were some big mistakes made.
Didn't the Federal Reserve System fail?
I know my time has run out, but I really fundamentally disagree with your point of view.
And I think there is a natural inclination that things are fixed, but things are not fixed.
Printing money doesn't produce goods and services. It doesn't hire people. It may seem like the right short-term medicine, but can the cure be worse than the disease in some cases?
You know, the way a healthy economy grows is people earn money and they go out and spend it. The way an unhealthy economy grows is people borrow money and they go out and spend it.
Somehow we need to go to an economy that isn't reliant on bubbles.
The United States has consumed more than it's produced for at least a decade.
XRP was built for one job: to act as a bridge for sending value cheaply and instantly. It settles in about 3 to 5 seconds, and the transaction costs a few thousandths of a cent. For the global remittance market, which is a multi-trillion-dollar industry, that kind of efficiency is a game-changer compared to the 2 to 5 day waits of the old system. Ripple's on-demand liquidity product uses XRP as a neutral asset. A company can swap Japanese yen for XRP, shoot the XRP across the world, and swap it into Mexican pesos on the other side, all in a matter of seconds. These are not just theoretical applications. The government of Palau is currently piloting a digital dollar utilizing XRP, and the resulting savings have already funded the construction of a new public clinic without an increase in taxes. Last quarter, Gemini launched its XRP MasterCard, which allows users to spend at any location that accepts MasterCard. The card features instant conversion, no foreign exchange markup, and crypto-based rewards. A startup named Zeno has developed a point-of-sale terminal that accepts XRP directly for a flat 30-cent settlement fee, removing percentages, minimums, and the complexities of chargeback disputes. Early adopters of this technology are reporting savings of up to $800 per month. Scaled across a commercial district, the economic impact becomes substantial, potentially preserving jobs. Besides those examples, more than 300 financial institutions are already on the RippleNet, and a growing number of them are using ODL to actually move the money. This is the foundation of a new financial infrastructure being built right under our noses. August 2025 was the moment the game changed for cryptocurrencies in America. A federal court ruled that XRP itself is not a security when you or I buy and sell it. That legal clarity was the green light that big money institutions were waiting for. Within days, you saw major players like Grayscale and Bitwise file for XRP ETFs. At the same time, the XRP futures contracts on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange CME blew past $1 billion in open interest, the fastest contract in the exchange's history to hit that mark. An approved ETF would mean XRP could be held in your 401k or IRA. This clarity also gives a roadmap to foreign central banks. Japan's top regulator authorizing yen-backed stablecoins on the XRP ledger is a perfect example. It allows a digital yen to move at the speed of XRP, essentially creating a central bank digital currency that runs on the same tracks as a neutral bridge asset. But wait, how can a stablecoin backed by the US dollar, like Ripple's RLUSD, possibly help replace the dollar? It sounds like a contradiction, but it's a classic Trojan horse strategy. The key isn't the asset itself, it's the rails it runs on.
Everybody wants to go back and say, things are fine now. Look, we solved our problem. We're just asking for another crisis.
This is an experiment. We've never done this before. We've never been here before. The Federal Reserve is really operating by the seat of their pants.
You have what degree of confidence in your ability to control this?
100%. How can the dollar be anything except the world's greatest monetary brand, the Coca-Cola of money? How can it be anything else but? Well, you just watch.
RLUSD lives and breathes on the XRP ledger. This gets major institutions comfortable using Ripple's network for dollar-based transactions, bypassing the ancient SWIFT system entirely. Once the world's financial plumbing is rebuilt on top of the XRP ledger to handle RLUSD, switching from a dollar-backed token to the network's native neutral asset, XRP, becomes a flick of a switch. The stablecoin builds the superhighway. XRP is the supercar it was designed for. It moves the world's financial habits onto Ripple's home turf, making the final move away from the traditional dollar system a small, logical last step. Here's a critical piece of the puzzle: the economics of the XRP ledger. The total supply of XRP is fixed forever at 100 billion. Now, for banks and payment companies to use on-demand liquidity, they have to hold a certain amount of XRP to operate. As more institutions join the network, the demand for this working capital goes up, but the supply stays fixed. On top of that, every single transaction permanently burns a tiny fraction of XRP. It's removed from the supply forever. This creates a slow, constant deflationary pressure. It's basically supply and demand. The system that keeps the dollar on top was designed after World War II. We live in a different world now. Value is digital, and data flies across borders in an instant. The fastest growing economies in Asia and the Middle East are actively building financial systems so they don't have to depend on one country's currency. China banned crypto trading but embraced the underlying technology, signaling they want payment rails that aren't painted red, white, and blue. Countries like Japan, South Korea, and the UAE are all chasing the same goal. The second a major trade corridor, like oil sales from Dubai to Tokyo, starts settling in a neutral asset like XRP, the dominoes would really start to fall. Consider the potential economic cascade. A local restaurant no longer needs to inflate its prices to cover card fees. The cost of a coffee might decrease from $6 to $5.50. A bookstore could retain an additional 3% on every sale, providing enough capital to host community events. The billions of dollars that were previously absorbed by middlemen could be redirected to fund higher wages, business expansion, and local projects. This is not merely theoretical. The pilot programs from Palo to Portland are already proving the concept. Once this trend gains momentum, Visa and MasterCard will face two choices: significantly reduce their fees or risk losing merchants. In either scenario, the consumer and the small business owner benefit. As nations around the world race to develop their own central bank digital currencies, they run into a new problem. A digital dollar, a digital euro, and a digital yen are still separate currencies that don't speak the same language. This is where a neutral bridge asset becomes not just useful, but essential. Think of XRP as the universal translator for this new world of digital money. It's designed to sit in the middle, allowing a bank to instantaneously swap a digital yen for XRP, and then from into a digital peso without being exposed to the volatility or politics of a third country's currency. We're already seeing the blueprint for this with Japan's moves to put stablecoins on the XRP ledger. As more countries digitize their currencies, the demand for a neutral, non-national asset to bridge them all together will only intensify. The case for XRP centers on speed, low cost, and growing interest from established names in finance. If change comes, it may not look like a dramatic revolution, but rather a gradual and practical transition, when converting to dollars for a simple international payment may become less necessary, faster and more efficient routes emerge.